Hi guys, Demonic Angel. Today I'm going to actually talk about my absolutely favorite H.P. Lovecraft story ever. I've read, I believe, all of his works. A lot of them are longer, but he also wrote a lot of short stories for Pulp Fiction magazines, and essentially this is one that's just my favorite. I mean, it's hard to pick because there's obviously it's Lovecraft, but when I reread this again, I don't know, probably a couple months ago, I just thought, boy, that really is my absolute favorite short story ever by Lovecraft. It was published in 1922, and it's called The Tomb. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about it with you guys today. Now, the main character, his name is I think it's pronounced Jervis. I could be totally wrong because I'm not specifically good with that kind of stuff, but I'm going to call him Jarvis for the story because it just, it's something I can say. But the story of The Tomb is essentially that Jarvis, he's born to this richer family, and because of that, he's allowed to be homeschooled by servants, and he doesn't have to go and socialize and all that stuff. So that's fine, and apparently he's also the only child. But as time goes on, Jarvis, he spends a lot of time wandering the woods by his house, and he does this alone at night, and essentially the more he does this, the more he just feels that call, that pull to being in the darkness, to feeling his best in the darkness of the forest, and in some kind of because obviously reading it is the big piece of pie here, but he hones in on kind of a supernatural ability because he spends so much time out in the woods. So he kind of takes this to have that meaning of he has really sensitive perceptions, intuition, and he's this young lad. Of course, probably not a coincidence that he's about to go through puberty later in the story, and as he comes out the other side of that at the age of 21, he has this crisis. But so from a child, he's already experiencing a deep sense to go into the unknown. And for me, when I was young, I liked to spend a lot of time in cemeteries. I'm talking about as a little kid, and I would usually tell the other people that because it was near a sports field that the school would use, I would say I was watching the game, I just went to walk around, I went to go get food, but I was really I wanted to go, I wanted to find rides there and whatever, but essentially too, I just couldn't stay away. I felt so drawn to going, and I would go to my great-great-grandmother's grave, and just a gotta have it, gotta do it, I need to do this feeling. And as a little kid, I thought that my past life memories were maybe a ghost or another dead person, and so I really didn't identify that with myself. But yeah, I can really relate to that part of the story, which is obviously why I love it. But anyway, after his nightly visits to the woods, he eventually stumbles upon a really small old graveyard, and it has one of those mausoleums that have like a chain lock on it. And you know, first it's just curiosity, all this kind of stuff, but he keeps going back at night to the mausoleum. And but like I mentioned, the actual mausoleum is locked, and so he can't get in. But he, at this point, he's still this young boy, and he goes to start to slip away in the summer and sleep near the mausoleum. Like, that's just, this kid feels so compelled to do this. Now, I did not go sleep in the cemetery at night as a kid, but I guess young Jarvis was more haunted than many of us would be. You know, one of those old souls who's really young, and then they just carry the weight of the world on their shoulders emotionally. You know, that kind of has to do with reincarnation sometimes. And so he believes that he eventually, you know, comes to see this as, this is where he needs to be, and he just decides that he can start communicating with the spirits of the mausoleum. And he does this is really fascinating to me, through astral projection. So it's very vivid for Jarvis. He's projecting inside of the tomb, and he believes that once he, you know, does that, he can have conversations, learn about these people there. So eventually he's at home studying again for school, being homeschooled, and he goes through some stuff, and he finds some paperwork about how it's like his mom had the same last name as this family name on the mausoleum. So he becomes convinced that they're maybe like his family. So he spends when he's not wandering around the forest, he's wandering around his mansion at night, and he eventually goes to the attic and finds a key in an old chest, and he knows that this is going to be the key that's going to open the chain lock on the mausoleum. So of course he sets out, and that was significant because he is a little bit older here, and the more he has to, you know, as he's becoming an individual, the almost, it's like the scarier, like kids kind of have some kind of, they experience memories from the past life, and they just kind of feel it, and then, you know, release it, and it really doesn't have anything to do with them anymore. But for certain people, I guess like fictional Jarvis here, that pull actually gets stronger the older a person gets. If their ego just identifies with that so much, and they need to know these details of their past life in order to resolve those issues, then that kind of that connection gets stronger, but for the most part it disappears as well. I should say it gets integrated. But yeah, so he gets his key and he heads down to the mausoleum, and at first he doesn't just go in. He just is so excited. He wants to continue to astral project into the tomb and get really hyped up about it. I mean, which is what we cultists do in rituals, you know, before that. And he just continues that a while till he decides that he is ready. And essentially his father thinks that he's out doing drinking, drugs, partying, hedonism, and you know, doesn't pay too much attention to it, because that's where he thinks he sneaks off at night, not to go to the cemetery, but to go party like a normal young person. Well, then he eventually hires somebody to follow Jarvis to see if he's really addicted to drugs or what the heck's going on with him here. While that's going on, Jarvis when he does stay at home and sleep, he has nightmares about fire, thunder, loud noises. And so those dreams about just, you know, dying and nightmares in all these different kinds of scenarios, but just involving that common element of fire. And, you know, so it's taking this, you know, Jarvis, it's taking this toll mentally on him. He's not being a normal young man, and he's obviously through all this, he's really kind of blurring the line between what is real, understanding what is real, and what is the astral plane. And that's just kind of this weird, my comment on that is that it's just this warning to all of us that, you know, you can't just live on the astral plane. And sometimes it's really tempting to just, I mean, you know, because fantasy, escapism, mentally like that, it can be just really addictive, I guess. Like, the more you accomplish it, or, you know, you do this consciously, the more that it just, you get better at doing it. So it becomes very fascinating and enthralling, I think. And it's just something that some people can't handle. But yeah, he brings his key and sleeps near the mausoleum, and the butler that was hired to spy on him follows him to the cemetery. Well, at this point, Jarvis, he goes to sleep and next to the mausoleum, but at some point in the night he wanders back farther into the forest, and there is the nothing left but the foundation of the old family house, the people who are buried in the mausoleum nearby. And when he goes into the, you know, he stands in the rubble and the foundation, and it's burned, right? And we talked about his fear of fire. He has this experience, which, I mean, to him feels like is really happening, because he doesn't, like we talked about, he really doesn't know what's going on as far as what's real. And he thinks that he's just having this night of drinking and socializing, which is kind of unusual for him, because he's very quiet and introverted and solemn, you know, kind of a character. But he gets completely wasted, and he's also very, like, he's very excitable, angry, just this whole shift in personality. So eventually, though, he just, like, loses it even in more. And while he's having this party in his mind, to him, he remembers hearing thunder, and then feeling, smelling smoke, and dying in this fire. And then the last little part of that is that, you know, he gets struck by lightning, or he burns, and so his ashes just scatter in the wind. And he's not going to be buried in the family crypt because he's just ashes. So that's what happens in his mind. And so obviously, you know, at the end here, Jarvis realizes that he is the reincarnation of this one guy who we just mentioned. And the reasoning for that is because when he was communing with these spirits, they were acting like they knew him, like they were all family and things like that. So you're supposed to take Lovecraft's word for this, that he's the reincarnation of the Hyde family member, I believe that's what the family name, Hyde, reincarnation of this man. So he decides, anyway, the butler thinks he's crazy because he comes upon him and he's actually just yelling and acting insane and trying to strip himself naked while he's in the woods, and so he thinks that he's crazy. Well, Jarvis's father sees all this, and Jarvis tries to basically explain all this weird shit, all his thoughts, and arguably he is insane. So his father sends him off to the asylum, but while he's there, the butler guy continues to visit him because he's very intimate with the family, and Jarvis tells him, "Hey, I really think that when I die, I want you to take these documents, and I want to be, the documents talking about his mom's family history." Most people in this time, like 1922, would keep family histories and Bibles, different, any kind of family book that was really important. They would put pictures and family information in, birth, death dates, relations. So he tells the butler that that's how he's related to these people. And so he just loses his lust for life, his really ability to do anything about it, and he wastes away and he passes away, Jarvis. And when they go to open the butler brings forth the paperwork, and so they say, okay, well, we're going to inter him here. I guess he really was related to these people. And then we get they open up the slab of wall to remove that space so that they could put that casket in there. And sure enough, though, there was no body in that, because the gentleman in the mausoleum, his name was Jarvis as well, so they had the same first and last name. Now, why wasn't there a body? That's because that guy, they were hoping at some point to find part of his body or whatever and inter him with the family, but he burned his body and they didn't have anything to put there. And basically we're supposed to, as the readers, kind of understand that, hey, there's no way that Jarvis could have known that there wasn't a body inside the mausoleum. It was locked until his death, and some things are just like that, very unexplainable. But what I really like about this is that for me, it's that real pull of reincarnation, that theme that we're always looking at. Because in Jarvis's case, unfortunately, he doesn't resolve his issues. He doesn't integrate his last life with what is him now, and it's just the experience of examining and not just that, but living in a way as his past life through this constant astral projection. And eventually, I mean, he's going into trances, obviously, and this is very vivid and real, but he's not really able, when he's alive, to do anything about it. He doesn't find an inner peace that, I mean, if this story had a happy ending, it would be like, hey, Jarvis, he integrated, he after this experience, he wasn't afraid of fire anymore, and he stopped sleeping at the cemetery because now he knows who he is, and he's got that little piece of him, and it's got a name to it, and he grows because of this. that's not the ending to this story. This is, that happens to him, and he doesn't recover from it. But what I like to see is when people do. And but I also like this because it's just demonstrating what I really believe is that pull of reincarnation of, I mean, for me, I needed to go to this specific grave. I needed to be going to cemeteries because that's a part of me. I mean, I've obviously come to understand that as that now, but it's just really, it's really strong, and I'm not gonna, I'm gonna have the happy ending of the integrated reincarnated soul here, because I've taken this information and trying to do really good things with it. But, I mean, even if I remove my belief in reincarnation, we're all parts of these different people that we're made up of. And I think that part of it has to be, part of it is your personality. Part of it is you inherit similar ways of thinking from people, that you're descended from. And no matter what, that's a part of you. That's a part of your psyche, your mind, that really isn't just you. You as who you're deciding to be. Part of that's a recessive element of another subjective individual that was once living, and some part of it just, I mean, that's you. It might be why you like stories. It might be why, why you have different phobias or whatever. But it really is just you. And so it's really, I just think that that's really cool. For me, and that hunger aspect of it, I thought, yeah, maybe I am the reincarnation of my grandmother, but now, then the longing didn't go away. I needed to know so bad about the different. I just needed to know about the different personalities. I needed to have some different states of family. I needed this timeline, and that just grew and grew for me. But what I did before that, though, is before I really was able to find all this information out for my dad about the family history, I was able to put all that out about this different details about my last life. And I was like, you know what, I'm just curious if any of it checks out. Wouldn't that be cool if it did? And honestly, every single piece of information matches up with, who I still am. So it's funny because I am investigating claims I made many years ago, and things I used to do, and the way I used to be, and there's a little trace of it, because I left it like that, and I just can't, I can't believe that. So, but it really has. I needed to know. I needed to know that kind of stuff specifically, and I think that the tomb really sums up what that kind of hunger is like for people to understand these recessive aspects of themselves. At least that is that way for me. And when I found out about my biological grandfather, then that's probably the only other comparable experience like that where I was able to really put to be a little bit less lonely in my heart, just I had some answers, and it kind of explained who one of my spirit guides is as well. But it's really just amazing to know that I get to love, I guess, these two different families, knowing that I'm very close and personal with adoption issues, that, you know, probably more than likely my biological great-grandparents were probably like a priest and a nun who dropped my grandfather off at an orphanage, probably because it wasn't too far, and that it just helps me explain my mind, and I think that it's interesting that my grandfather had some abilities like this, and so now I know, like, I know who he is, and all that kind of stuff. So every time I get something like that, I mean, I really think that I think I'm done, you know, finding out family secrets and shit, but like that's really spiritual, elevating, putting the pieces of a puzzle together that is me. And I would apologize for the long video, but it's just kind of how I am. So I'll talk to you guys later.